Welcome back to another brand design from scratch video. I took an accidental hiatus, but I am back. You guys requested that I design a brand from scratch for a tech company. You ask and you shall receive. I'm going to show you the whole process from strategy and ideation to logo design to building out the complete brand visual identity, including mockups and how I present it and stuff. It's not always a perfect linear path, so I wanted to show you a more realistic process and how I work. Every designer has their own way of doing things, and you'll start to figure out what works best for you specifically. Yeah, this is what works for me. If you're new, I'm Alex, and I'm a brand designer based in Atlanta, Georgia. I do a lot of other multimedia, collage, etc. I also just got a new cat and I just fed him, so if you hear some munching in the background, that's him. His name is Neutron and he is a menace. Say hi. Okay. I kind of have beef with the tech industry for multiple different reasons. A lot of human rights violations and a lot of things that fuel our tech industry that are really unethical. So I created a concept for a brand called Homebase. Essentially, it's a platform where people can connect with their neighbors. I kind of came up with this idea because I just wish there was like an all-in-one platform for me to be able to build more of a community while also having access to different resources. I wanted to reach people who are looking for more of a sense of community or who want to feel prepared for any climate events. Their pain points is that they feel a little bit isolated because of that. They don't necessarily know where their resources are. So Homebase, the strategy is to target those pain points and make their lives easier by helping them connect with neighbors and build more of that sense of community. Just from like the top of my head, my main competitor would probably be something like Nextdoor, but I feel like it's more of a host for a lot of Karens. We really still need an app that connects people a little bit more. Given all of that, we can start to shape the personality of the brand. So I really want the brand to feel energetic, welcoming, and really trustworthy. I want it to evoke tech, specifically sustainable tech, but I also want it to feel community-oriented. Before I start designing, the first thing I do is I like to put together a little bit of a mood board. Usually I just go on Pinterest, and sometimes I go on Dribbble too and Behance, but it just kind of depends. Okay, so I have some logo ideas in here, some other brand designs that I like that focus more on sustainability and community. Some of these community garden brands or like fresh food brands, nature-oriented design, more of like the natural colors that people are using in those designs, the community feeling. I've also pulled in some other more tech inspiration. I added in some solarpunk illustrations because I feel like that could be cool. If you're not familiar with solarpunk, it's a really cool sci-fi art movement and literary movement. It kind of envisions a future of people living in harmony with nature, and usually it includes people using renewable energy sources and lush green spaces. It's a very aesthetic movement, but I kind of feel like it ties into the foundation of my brand a little bit, so I kind of pulled some of these in because I think it could be cool to draw some inspiration from it. And then I have a few other random elements in here that I've pulled in for different things, from typography to poster design, illustration ideas. I don't really have a strong direction yet. I kind of want to see how some of these things play out once I start designing. And here's a few more things that I pulled in directly to my working file as well for inspiration. I think that this project is going to challenge me a little bit because I haven't designed much in the tech space, so I'm excited to see how it comes to life. It's a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I'm excited, and I'm excited to kind of make it my own. So for the logo, I started with some sketches, pen and paper, just because that is my preferred method to get all of my ideas out. I feel like I can just do iterations more quickly, and it's honestly pretty messy. I don't know how people have such perfect sketches. Everyone works differently, but my logo sketches tend to be really rough. So when I was throwing around some ideas, I was kind of thinking through different ways of using modular pieces, like a solar panel almost, maybe using some isometric grids. I wanted to keep my logo looking very tech forward, so that it kind of fits into that tech genre still and also has that more trustworthy, reliable feeling. The most obvious choice to me was to use the actual Homebase shape. Shocking. And it also looks like a home, which makes sense, hence Homebase, which I honestly didn't realize until I started this project. So yeah, the dots, they're all connecting. I'm gonna pull up an illustration Illustrator file and start with that shape. I'm gonna see how the radial repeat looks with the triangle and try to create some sun rays, almost like a beacon, which would symbolize like hope in the difficult times. If I don't like how it looks, I probably will just draw triangles by hand and place them by hand, but I kind of like how this is working so far. Then I'm gonna use the Pathfinder shape modes, which honestly still confuse me. Like, I should know them better, but I'm completely self-taught in Illustrator, and honestly, some things are just still a little confusing to me, and that's okay. These softwares all have a really steep learning curve. If you also get them confused, just know you're not alone. I'm just gonna play around with those until I find the right one. And as I am doing these iterations of my logo, I'm duplicating each one. If I make any changes to it, I'm gonna duplicate it and move it over just so I have my progress saved with it so I don't have to go back and redo it. If I decide that I like a previous iteration more and want to work off of it, then I always have it right there and I can go back to it. Let's round out the corners here to make it feel a little bit softer and give it more of that warm community feeling. Okay, so these are all right, but I think I'm gonna keep pushing the idea. I really like these little shapes. I don't really know how to describe them, but they almost look like hands holding something, like when they're facing each other. And they kind of just fit well into this shape with the angle here. I'm gonna put a circle in the middle like the sun, and then I'm just gonna add the rays back in. And for now, I'm just masking stuff with the background color just to see how it looks and how I like it. But eventually I'll want to make it into proper shapes and like cut them all out individually. Sometimes I kind of go off course when I start designing in Illustrator because I come up with more ideas that maybe I didn't have when I was sketching. I try and do a lot of different versions of it, but I don't have like a set number goal. I just kind of go until I feel really confident in the one that I have. And sometimes I change my mind like 2 days later. I don't usually do this all in one sitting, and I honestly don't recommend doing it in one sitting. So here are my variations. I ended up turning it upside down so that it feels a bit more bottom heavy and grounded, because the upside down version, I thought it might be unique and interesting, and I'm glad that I tried it, but it just feels a bit top heavy, and I feel like the brand is supposed to feel very grounded. I really like how it turned out. I think I'm pretty happy with this. There's definitely still a part of my brain that is like, you can keep editing it. But yeah, I'm just gonna put it aside and just go with it because yeah, we can't get stuck on things. So yeah, now let's pick out some fonts. For the main font, I either want a humanist sans serif or a geometric sans serif for a trustworthy brand. And for something that feels a little bit more techy and innovative and modern, I think a sans serif would be a good fit. The humanist sans serif basically indicates like the tool that was used to write it. The geometric would just be a little bit more linear. Either of those would work really well for this brand. So I'm gonna duplicate home base in upper and lowercase to see what I like best, because I'm not sure what I want yet. And I've picked out a few different fonts already. Okay, so I ended up with these, and a lot of them are pretty similar, but I'm just gonna narrow them down a little bit at a time. I feel like this one is just a little bit too funky. Not loving this one. I'm not really feeling these either. I mean, I like all of them, but I'm just not feeling these as much as the other ones. I'm gonna stick to one of the ones in the middle just because they feel a bit more grounded. Even though the humanist sans serif fits with my brand, I still think I can achieve the feeling that I want with a geometric font. And I definitely want something really neutral. It's hard to describe why I like this one more, but I feel like it's just a bit softer. Maybe would help it go more in the community direction. This geometric one feels really sophisticated, and I am obsessed with this font, and it still has rounded warmth, but I think that the other one is going to make it feel a little bit more accessible to people. And that's what I'm kind of going for. Okay, I picked out a few other fonts to pair with it. These would be used more for decorative purposes like headlines, any kind of hero text, etc. You may recognize some of these. There's Poppins, Bookmania. The font that I picked, which is called Manrope, is just more neutral and is pretty legible, so I think that it would be good for a body copy. So I think we have a little bit more room to play with personality here. If we can add back in some of that warmth and like human feel and make it a little bit more approachable too. Manrope is more of a condensed font, so I think a narrow font like this one, which is called Haas Narrow Rounded, would pair really well with it. And it also has that warmth and that modern feeling and personality. This one just feels really unique and recognizable and a little bit different. So I feel like it's worth trying just because I don't want it to feel too bland either. I want it to feel exciting and interesting. So I think they would just make a really good pairing together. I'm gonna insert the logo that I made earlier into the word in place of the O. And I'm gonna align it with the letters. I'm gonna build out a few different variations, try stacking the words, maybe lining up the E's and connecting the H and the B somehow. I don't know exactly how yet. It doesn't really feel right to me. I don't think it's really stacking that well. Maybe I will pull the H down. Home base. Maybe I'll try the logo mark next to the words. I think my best options here are just the word with the logo mark in it and the logo mark above the word and then the logo mark just standing alone. So we're just gonna go with those because I feel like stacking it just isn't working. I just have to move on. Once again, onto the color palette. I really like the idea of having a bright green or like a neon yellow in there that kind of matches like the sun rays and the logo mark and brings out that bright, vibrant feeling. And then having the rest be a little bit more subdued and neutral so that it adds a little bit more balance to the color palette. And I also want it to read as tech forward. It is kind of weird. It is kind of like a hybrid brand, so it doesn't really fit into one category, which makes it a little more difficult, but also opens up the possibilities, I feel like. I've pulled in some inspiration for the color palette. I'm just gonna pull from these and create a custom one and try it out with my logo mark. Sometimes I feel like my process is hard to categorize exactly into logo, color palette, illustration, etc. just because sometimes when I'm working on one thing, I'll have an idea for another, or I'll go back and adjust something. So there's not really like an order to things necessarily. A lot of the times I'm going back and forth between these different things, and as it's coming to life, they're all kind of falling into place together. And I also just change my mind a lot. Don't expect yourself to work like in order just because like our brains don't really work like that all the time. Here's the final color palette. I feel like it has a really good amount of contrast and it achieves the personality that I'm going for. I'm gonna mainly use these four on the left, and the right side can be secondary colors if I need them, but we'll see. So I'm gonna start by designing a set of posters now that I have my color palette and my logo and everything.
I had some camera troubles, so here is an audio voiceover instead. Going back to my inspo, I really like the simple line art. I feel like it's very modern and connects to the idea of resilience. So I'm going to play with some of these lines and geometric shapes and stuff. I like these connected circles, so I'm going to build some out and see what I want to use from them. Finding photos for this is really hard because I don't really want to put a specific face to the brand, but I want it to communicate connection and community. I'm going to go more abstract with the actual design part to try to represent those things instead of images. If this was a physical product, I feel like it would be a lot easier to visualize with photos and stuff, but I think illustrations will suit this brand better. I like the idea of them being concentric. I think the shapes connecting and stacking kind of evokes that sense of community building, connecting with others, just community in general. It almost looks like a topographical map. I think it looks kind of cool. Pretty unenthused about these, not really loving them. I feel like the idea was there, but they aren't really pairing well enough together and they just don't really feel as clean and professional, I guess. So I like the circles, but the other two just aren't really doing it for me. So let's go back to the drawing board. I pulled some more photos. I really want to keep pushing this circle idea because it's in my logo and I think they could almost be like representing little people. We could play around with the circles a little bit more and be more creative with it. I'm making a grid of circles and adding my copy in. Maybe I could fill in a few of them. I'm filling in a few next to each other to represent connectivity, and I think the circles could resemble some of these lines of copy, so I'm going to use the copy to guide how I lay them out. Sometimes you just gotta start over, and that is totally okay and normal, and happens to me all the time. I really like this idea of filling in certain circles to create a bigger design, kind of symbolize something. So I'm going to do that with the same grid on each one, just because I feel like having all these different layouts just isn't really looking cute. She's not looking cute. So let's try with the grid and see if we can do something with that and filling in some of the circles. Cool. And then I'll add in my logo mark just to have some more brand recognition in there, and change the colors, mock it up, etc. And here are the final posters. I am going to do another set because I have another idea for something. I'm going to add in my copy here and leave some spaces, and then I'll add in the circles next to each other, and then overlapping some, and then overlapping completely as a filled in one to convey sort of that connecting in order to build strength. And I feel like it says the most without doing much. They say good design is as little design as possible. I looked it up and it's Dieter Rams. Shout out to Dieter Rams for speaking his truth. I want to add in some photos just to make it feel a little bit more tangible, and I think I'm going to have to be more creative with the kind of photos that I get. So I think I want to capture like the essence overall. People hanging out, people gardening, etc. Different like features maybe of like community and resilience hubs, things like that. And then I'm going to add text at the bottom and combine these into one and just turn it into a single page ad, if you will. And yeah, here's how it looks mocked up in this cute little park.
I wanted to design an app interface for Homebase just because I feel like that would help really bring it to life and help people visualize it and like what exactly it is. Because right now it's still kind of abstract. And I must give a disclaimer that I'm not a UI designer. There's a lot of technical things you gotta know for UI design, and I don't know those, but I kind of want to push myself to try it just because I think it would really help this brand come to life, and I always want to be learning. So you're seeing me learn real time because this is not my usual territory. So to get started, I pulled a few references that I think could fit this brand well, just to help me understand like what looks good for UI. With UI, you have to really think about how the person is going to view your design in an interactive way. I'm just going to start by making a few different icons that I may or may not use. I have a list of things that I want in my app, so I'm going to use that to guide which icons I make, but I'm also going to have some like just the basic ones that you would have in every app, like your profile button or messages button, things like that. I'm just going to build out a simple login page with a login and sign up button because I've seen that in a few different designs and I feel like that would be a good thing to get started with. I have this tagline, more resilient together. I feel like that's probably just my most simple copy that I could use that boils the brand purpose down to like one sentence. I'm just gonna experiment on the homepage and swap out some different colors, see how it looks, add in the time and the Wi-Fi and battery, etc. All the things that you'd usually see on the top of your phone, just to make it look realistic. And then a little good morning. I think I'm gonna add these circles with the arrow shape back in here on the login page to fill that space a little bit. And maybe I'll eventually add a little gradient over this just to make it look more UI, I guess. For the home page, I really want to do these different buttons to show all the features of the app, and then do a page with a map where it shows where different resources are, like hubs, chargers, etc. And I'll build out a little sample one here for a resilience hub with a fake Audi and description. Okay, so I'm really not loving this middle one. It's not resonating with me, and I think the buttons are not standing out and it could be more dynamic. I'm gonna take another swing at it and take some time off camera maybe to play around with it and pivot. Again, this project is really challenging me, but I am becoming a better designer, hopefully. Okay, so this is working much, much better. I made them more similar colors. I felt like the beige background wasn't really working, like it didn't feel cohesive. So I kind of made them all similar, adjacent gradients, I guess. I tried to do more of like a widget style, I guess, is how I would describe it, so that each feature kind of stands out on its own and looks more visually salient. And it feels like more recognizable as UI. I also played with some gradients and the opacity on the buttons themselves. And I think that really helped add more depth to each one and make all of the gradients work together a little bit. I'm gonna finish building it out here, add a bit more detail to each one. So here's the final interface. I added some filters on the top of the map so that you could kind of filter through each category of locations on the map. And I simplified the bottom bar and added some sustainability goal measurements. This is just the best that it's gonna get right now. I'm just gonna have to go with this because I tend to get really stuck on things and sometimes you just gotta move on. I'm also gonna mock up a little app tile. I found this free mockup and I'm just gonna click on the layer where you add your design in and add my logo and colors and update the app name in there. Mockups are usually super easy like this. It'll tell you exactly what to do and it'll show you the exact layer to do things on. So they're usually really straightforward and easy to use. Usually I just find free ones. You can look on FreePic or Mockup World, or you can honestly just Google search and sometimes it'll lead you to a different website that has a really good free mockup. I really love this blue-green combo, but it's just not popping in the tile, especially against this black background. So I'll probably swap it out for the yellow and then I'm gonna make a custom background, kind of like the actual app gradient backgrounds. I'm gonna do something similar to that. That just will help my icon pop and make it look really good. I am super happy with that. You should customize mockups as much as you possibly can to make your branding stand out the best. You definitely don't have to use them exactly as they come. I oftentimes tweak mockups and make them my own and add things, take away things. Yeah, let's move on. I have an idea for a billboard that I basically want to use different front doors that represent people's homes. And I have this line I like. It only takes one virtual knock. I'm not a copywriter, but I'm pretty proud of that line. I think it just communicates that it's really easy to connect with people through home base. This is the mock-up I'm gonna use. I'm gonna go into Photoshop now and cut out the doors, bring them all together into one artboard sized for the mock-up. And honestly, I should probably do this whole thing in Photoshop, but I'm just gonna do it in Illustrator. But I'm just still gonna do all the color overlays on the doors in Photoshop so that they match my color palette, so that it'll look a bit more branded and cohesive. For some of them, I'm just adjusting the hue, like the dark blue one if it's close enough in color. And the others, I'm just adding a color overlay and playing with the blend modes. When you're adjusting the hue, there's only a certain degree that you can go that it'll look natural. So if you want something to look like a really opposite color of what it is, you probably will have to do a complete new color overlay on top of it. I'm gonna add my copy in here and maybe pull virtual out of the phrase so that it's more obvious that that's where the emphasis is, and have it pointing between one and knock. I'm gonna add a little subheadline at the bottom with my logo and just play around with it. I kind of like the idea of like a hand-drawn arrow, and I think it'll give it more of that personal feeling. I think the copy would be better on the left. I think you like read it left to right. I'll probably split it up into 2 lines. And yeah, awesome. For the final part of this video, I'm gonna make a little illustration of a resilience hub. Homebase would have a feature in the app that locates resilience hubs, so I just want to put a visual to it. So I'm pulling back in some of these solarpunk images that I originally found because I think these illustrations are really cool, and I think I'll probably do a slightly simpler style because at first I really wanted to do something exactly like these, but I just think that would take probably days. Kudos to these illustrators because these are beautiful illustrations. I like the idea of doing something isometric. So yeah, let's start illustrating this. Basically, a resilience hub is like a physical location that serves a community. It usually has things like resources for any kind of climate emergency or events, things like food, extra battery storage, solar panels, first aid, etc. They're just a really awesome resource for connecting people and giving them a centralized place for anything that they may need in an emergency, and also just providing them with a space where they can gather. So many people are chronically online. I think it's important for us to channel our energy into connecting with people around us. I honestly wish this app was real because I would 100% download it. Like, I've been trying to connect with all of the neighbors in my building, especially. It can be difficult because sometimes like people just are hard to reach. You may not run into them a lot, and some people just aren't as receptive to making connections with people in their building. So I feel like having an app to facilitate that would just be so helpful. If anyone is developing something like this, hit me up because I would totally love to work on a real life project like this. Okay, I'm just gonna color it all in now with my brand colors. I like the outline version, but I feel like it would pop more if it was colored in. So I'm gonna stick to my color palette, and then I think I'm gonna use some that aren't in there, like a brown for the benches and the dirt in the garden flatbeds. I'm not sure that this illustration also 100% connects with the other design styles. Yeah, this illustration is definitely self-indulgent because I love illustrating things like this, but I also think it's helpful. When I actually build it out into a slide and present it, maybe I'll pull in some elements from the app or something else onto the slide just to make it all feel like it goes together. So yeah, I built out this slide with a description and pulled in some elements from the app to tie it into the rest of the branding and connect things just a little bit more. And I think it looks super cool and informative, and we love high quality information. Okay, so here are all of the final designs in the slides that I built out. I added a brand mission description and added in those little circles as a pattern for the background on that slide too. And I resized the billboard for a bus shelter, added in a little tote bag design too. I'm really happy with how it all came together. I definitely did not envision it like this in the beginning, and it's cool to just see how it falls into place. I hope you love it and took something away from this video. If you have any specific requests for what I should do next, I'm open to hearing all of your suggestions and thoughts, even if it's like not branding related. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next one.